A number of years ago now, I was working for this organization doing software development. Even though I was doing this work, I was kind of dissatisfied with life in some way. And I really just had this burning question of, who am I? Why am I here? And this was this burning question. Occasionally in conversations with people, I would bring it up that I'm interested in this question. And it was kind of nagging at me. To be honest, it felt like almost every day I'd be constantly thinking about this question. It would be like on my mind in some way. This question stuck with me for a long time. And eventually I had a sort of a friend or an acquaintance who I kind of knew but not really well. He came up to me one day and he said, look, I know you're looking for the answer to this question, and I can guarantee you an answer if you will come on a journey. And that was pretty and I said, are you sure? Are you sure? Because this seems like a pretty big question and no one else seems to have many answers. What was funny about him is that I kind of knew that he knew. I knew that he knew who he was, and I knew he had the answer. And so I was like, okay, look, I will entertain this and kind of go along. That started a really interesting journey, which I'll talk about in a sec. And I think what that really points to, or what this whole thing is about, is the value of a good question. If you're new here, my name is Matthew, and my goal is to spark you to think differently so you can create new possibilities for yourself in your life. I really believe that all worthwhile things come from good questions or great questions. Just looking around my room here, there's an air conditioner, I've got my warm jacket, I've got this comfortable couch that I'm sitting on, I've got this camera. Someone has asked a good question, at least one good question, to make these things possible. With the air conditioner, someone has thought, what would it be like if we could make air that was comfortable for people to be in year round? What would that be like? And how could we do that? It's not like it just invented itself from nothing. This was like someone asked a question worthwhile of answering. I feel like life is full of these questions. It's easy to miss them. It's easy to be distracted by the easy questions of, what am I going to have for lunch tomorrow? Or when's my next dentist appointment? Or when will I call my friend? And I think one of the things that makes us interesting as human beings and worthwhile of pursuing good questions is how fascinating it is when people have a good question and they're inspired by a question. So to get back to my story of this invitation to go on a journey and see if I can find the answers to this question of who am I. So basically the invitation was, what you need to do is you need to come walking with this guy and a bunch of other people, walking in the desert for a few weeks, and you'll find part of the answer there. That was the sort of promise. That's a pretty wild claim. Come into the desert and find something of yourself there. Maybe I'm just a crazy person, but I accepted the offer and I bought my ticket. I packed up all my gear. I set off into the desert. It was a few plane rides, and I arrived in the center of the desert in Australia, and there's all these beautiful mountains, and it's just this beautiful landscape, nothing but trees and grass and just trails. And the walk started. I was pretty skeptical I was going to find something, but I was hopeful. And I think this is the story of how we all start looking for answers to important questions. We all start off going, I wonder if an answer is even possible. We can maybe look in other areas of life of where other people have found worthwhile answers to their questions, and it can inspire us that maybe the answer does exist. Maybe it doesn't, but maybe it does, and it's worthwhile looking. And it was basically a hike. We'd hike during the day and camp somewhere at night and hike the next day and just do this for 2 weeks. The first thing that I'm really struck by reflecting on it now is that my impression of what the story would be, what the journey would be like, was very different from what it was actually like. And this is just like any good question. When we actually start looking, we realize that we maybe didn't know nearly as much as we thought we did. The journey doesn't really look anything like what the actual journey is like. In theory, walking in the desert for 2 weeks is complicated and requires lots of detail. While that's kind of true, it's also completely not true. It's the real essence of walking in this kind of a walk is that you've got to take steps, and you take one step and then you take the next step. And what really started to develop after just taking all these steps was that there's this rhythm and routine that starts to sink in. For me, I kind of forgot that I was looking for the question and forgot exactly what I was looking for. And I think that's also so related to asking a good question. If we're really in pursuit of a good question, we can sometimes forget what it is that we're looking for. We kind of get distracted by how great things are or how terrible things are, and we miss focusing on the question. Then eventually I remembered the question and I kind of redoubled my efforts to really start looking to see if I could find an answer. After a while, we'd been walking for 5, 6, 7 days or something, and what I really noticed is that I was getting so used to a routine. We'd wake up before dawn, pack up our little tent, pack up, and then just start walking again. In any case, the walk continued for some time, and towards the end of, I think it was the 13th day or something, just towards the end, I finally kind of got a glimpse of the answer to my question. A really remarkable experience, and I'm not going to talk about too much now. I really did find a part of the answer to my question. I know for a fact that if I wasn't so driven to find the answer, I wouldn't have flown hundreds of kilometers and walked a long way in the desert in the search of an answer. I was inspired by a question, inspired by a worthwhile endeavor. What I really believe is that asking good questions will provide a meaningful life that is worth living and that is full of meaning and vigor and life and enthusiasm and joy and wonder and exploration. And if you ever need to find something worthwhile or worth pursuing, find a good question. Find a question that inspires you, that really makes you smile inside. Then explore that question. Really see how far you have to go to start to get a sense of the question, start to get a sense of maybe an answer. I'd say don't get attached to finding an answer. Sometimes not having an answer is just as good as having an answer. If you're interested in more good questions, sign up to my email newsletter. There's a link below. Every week, part of my journey is I'm asking good questions and I'm presenting answers to those questions or journeys to those questions in my email newsletter, and it might be of real interest to you. Until next time, the journey continues.